The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here with Everything MSP. Welcome to another episode of The Stack, where we focus on people, business, and technology. Today, we're diving into managed cybersecurity risk with two guests who have lived the MSP life and now help thousands more to defend it. We have Chris Wanamaker and Steve Weber, both from Sophos, that will be joining us here in just a quick moment. So if you've ever wondered, how do you get better security outcomes without burning out your team or your after hours on call, stick around. We're going to talk more about this. We're talking about MDR. We're talking about real threat hunting and how to choose the right partner to actually move the needle. Now, what we're going to do is bring in our guests. We have our two special guests here. So not just one, but two special guests. We have both Chris and we have our friend Steve here. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well, Dan.
Doing very well.
Awesome. It's good to have you guys here. What I'd love to have to do is for our audience, we'll start with Chris. Just let everybody know a little bit about yourself and give us a quick overview of what you're working on today at Sophos.
Sure. So Chris Wanamaker, as Dan said, previous MSP. So started, built, and sold my last MSP in just under 3 years. Really focused on delivering the results and security for clients. So that company got acquired, and now here I am at Sophos as a senior channel account executive for the MSP team. So I get to help partners every day do what I did as an MSP, as a partner, help build their business focused around cybersecurity. So
awesome. And Steve, how about yourself?
Yeah, former MSP as well. A little bit more of a tenured away from the MSP program than Chris. I've been at Sophos now for coming on 10 years. Prior to that, ran an MSP for about 20 years here out of the Central Florida region, dealing with everything from moving from a break-fix environment into that managed detection component on there, the managed services side. So yeah, happy to be here.
That's awesome. Glad to have you guys both here. Especially, we got, three bald guys, three guys with beards, two guys with glasses. There's some similarities here. And all, those that love cybersecurity, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we kick things off, I think one of the first questions that I have for you guys is, why is cybersecurity so important for MSPs right now?
I'll kind of jump in here. It's important because it can't be ignored. What cybersecurity used to be years ago was, I've got endpoint, and I'm secure, or I've got a firewall and I'm secure. And it's just not that way anymore. So much of what a business does in order to operate revolves around, the technology, and there's, bad guys out there all the time who are trying to exploit it. And so cybersecurity now is more important for every business. And then you add on top of that insurance requirements. When I was doing my MSP, the first insurance requirements were, do you have a firewall? And if you check that box, then it was like, great, you're covered. Here's your policy. Nowadays, they're asking, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Do you have MDR? What do you have in place? So the insurance requirements are more stringent, and there's just so many more layers to it that it cannot be ignored. The last piece of it really comes down to compliance. Compliance is becoming ever increasing in a number of industries, and cybersecurity is a big piece of that as well. So it's something that can't be kind of put on the side anymore. It really has to be at the forefront of what MSPs do for their business and their customers.
And I think to add on to that, as an MSP, you're a prime target. We've heard this over and over in the industry. Everybody keeps telling MSPs, and I think they really need to pay heed to that, is, as an MSP, you're typically running the network infrastructure for your customers. You're running their desktop environment. You're securing the data access, and you also have the remote tools in order to get into their environment, which essentially makes you a prime target for the bad guys. So, yes, we need to be presenting cybersecurity as an MSP to your customers, but MSPs also need to take a deep look at themselves as well as that first line. If they get their business compromised, that is going to go further into losing trust with their customers, where they're not going to be able to provide that level of security.
Yeah. And I do, one thing that I like to share a lot, and I probably use this over and over, maybe a little too much, is that, think about when you're on an airline and, they get on and they do that announcement about putting your oxygen mask on first before you help others, right? Because you got to take care of yourself and be prepared. So, with that being said, where would you say that MSPs are most exposed today? Would it be people, process, or tooling gaps?
Coming in from where they're probably the most exposed inside of the environments is absolutely going to be people. We can put as many tools, as much technology in between, the attacker and the people. There's a great meme from a long time ago. It's in a boxing ring. You've got all this technology in one corner, and then you've got the end user sitting there. And that end user, he's going to do everything in his power just to bypass that. At the end of the day, if they want to go somewhere, if you have end users not paying attention, they're going to click on it. They're going to bring the attacks into the environment. So, for me, it always starts with the people. We need to have the technology, you need to have the processes in place, but we also have to have somebody watching what those end users are doing, and we need that user education in there as well.
Yeah. We talked about earlier the good old days where you had some type of endpoint protection or just some AV, and you called it good. You were a cybersecurity provider, and you click that, you check the box, and and why is that checkbox for endpoint security just not enough anymore?
Because it's not. I mean, if you're just checking a box, you're, in my opinion, doing a disservice to your customer. Because it is more comprehensive. Just to say, this is what it is, check a box and move on, doesn't really provide that security for the customer. There's so many different elements that go into properly protecting a customer, their data, their employees. When you look at things like CMMC, it's not just, do you have this in place? It's how is it being monitored? How is it being managed? What is the process for it? And so there's more of a demonstration to what's being done and how it's being done versus just is it or is it not being done.
Well, and I think you can take that a step further as well. If we talk endpoint protection, that like checkbox security component on there, security's gone well beyond just that device that the end user is working on. We've all got mobile phones, mine right here, which just started ding in front of me. We're connected through 365. So there's all these different technologies, web-based applications, that edge to the environment has really eroded. We are basically in the cloud. All your data is living there. So if we're just looking at the endpoint, we're just seeing what's going on in that, we're not getting enough. We need to analyze what's going through email. We need to take a look at the logins going into their 365, their identity providers. So that cybersecurity foothold needs to extend way beyond just that endpoint.
And you kind of answered a question that I had as far as how do we measure the efficacy, beyond we deployed it, and you were starting to walk through, Steve, some of those things. What are some other things that we need to look at to make sure that it is more than just we've deployed it and, we're good to go?
There's like I said, there's a bunch in there going through, all the security aspects. We live in a digital age, making sure, that they are hitting compliance, making sure people are updating mobile devices and access into those environments. MFA obviously has become a big one. I know most of us these days hate having to go find your phone, or you go to log in and you're like, where's my phone? I need to go find that. But
Yeah.
those things are really what are, keeping the bad guys out of the environment. That's why we keep adding additional layers on top of that. We've gone from just, one-time passwords into passkeys into, certificate-based authentication into the environment. So to measure that, you really have to have a good, strong central management piece to take in that data, understand what's coming from the endpoint, what's coming from the user, their email, all these different angles that they're getting attacked from, and be able to report on that correctly to ensure that nothing is slipping through the cracks.
So when we take a look at kind of as we evolved to becoming MSPs, going from those break fix days where it was more reactionary to being more proactive. We all should at this point be at a operational maturity where we are focused on that proactive aspect, and hopefully we don't lose sight of where we started with, right? Because being proactive is truly what managed services is all about, because otherwise we're just break fix providers. So with that being said, proactive threat hunting, do you actually do it after a detection, or in essentially, why does this matter?
Chris, do you want to start with this one?
No, go for it, Steve.
Okay. Yeah. So I have this conversation pretty much anytime I talk to a partner out there. If they are running, just the basic endpoint protection component, and with any AV vendor out there, you're going to have alerts that come in. We're going to see, X detected and blocked inside of the environment. And typically you see that and you get the alert from your provider, Sophos in this case, saying, we stopped this threat. Great. Everybody gives a thumbs up and we clear that alert. We acknowledge it and we don't look past it at that point. But now you need to ask the question, like, okay, why did this happen? Where did it come from? Was this an isolated incident inside of that environment? Or is this just a first indicator of an attacker that's gained a foothold inside of that environment? So yeah, without a doubt, if you are not having somebody looking at your alerts, and I don't just mean going in the morning and having that initial tech run through the alerts dashboard and make sure nothing looks too crazy and then clearing them out, but somebody diving in and asking, okay, we see this alert. Where did it come from? How did this happen? Is it isolated? Is it not isolated inside the environment? You need that. It's not enough just to go in and say, yes, it's done. That's an active adversary waiting in the back end for you to mess up.
Yeah.
I think to your point, Steve, I think asking that why is this alert here? Why did we receive this? What does it mean? Because as you pointed out, that could be one of the initial indicators that something is going wrong. And it's like, well, yeah, it stopped it here. But again, why did that come up? Because in a controlled, somewhat controlled environment, you shouldn't have a whole lot of alerts. So if you're starting to see things, it's like, well, we need to understand, why is this coming up the way that it is?
Yeah. So, I think, the one big thing is, as we, look to bring on new solutions and, and we partner with the vendor, how do we ensure that they're really hunting and not just waiting for those alerts to come in?
Yeah, I think, with the MDR team, they'll go in and I'm going to share a story just kind of on my experience here. There was a customer of mine where one of those early indicators, popped up. And so it generated an alert, and the MDR team went in. They not only looked at the machine that generated the alert, but then looked around the rest of the environment, said, what are we looking at? What are we seeing? And then provided me as the MSP a full-on report of like, hey, here's the indicator. Here's what happened. Here's what we detected. Here's what we found. Here's some thoughts. Here's some things that you should check out. Here's some things that we checked out. And so, for us, knowing that it wasn't just hey, we saw this thing, you should check it out. It was, hey, we dug in, and these are all the things that we looked at. These are all the areas that, necessarily at that time they didn't have access to. Said, hey, you need to check this out. This is what we recommend. Here's your checklist. I mean, it's a full on, communication. So you know, for us as the MSP, that really helped us understand that, you know, they're not just going, hey, we saw something pop up and letting you know. It's, hey, we're digging into this and we're really, you know, working to make sure that you know what's going on, the best way to resolve it. Is this normal behavior? Is this not? You know, and then, you know, where do we need to go as a team to resolve this and make sure that we have, you know, a secure environment.
Yeah, and to add on to that a little bit, just from the Sophos side of this, because I've been in this realm now for 10 years after leaving my MSP. I've seen the Exchange Hafnium breaches out there. I've seen the Screen Connect components out there. And what our MDR team did, as soon as we had those news articles that are out there, we had those indicators of compromise coming into our team did a proactive threat hunt against all of our customer base out there. And we actually proactively reached out to all of them. Hey, do you know you have a server that is potentially affected by this? We also went through and said, basically gave them that information of, yes, you have a machine that is potentially able to be compromised. It needs to be patched, but we see no evidence of any wrongdoing inside of your environment. This has not been breached at this point. So having that level of confidence to be able to, reach out, having a team that can grab all those indicators of compromise and attack inside the environment, and then proactively provide that information to you as the MSP, that's absolutely what you need inside of your environment. You need to know that somebody's got your back.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think, it's so critical for MSPs that might be strapped with, talent, time, margin, and, ultimately they're looking to do more with less without sacrificing that coverage. And, that peace of mind, I think, is critical for an MSP to compete in the market today. And, so, with that aspect of it, you take a look at nights and weekends and holidays. Should MSPs be watching customer networks when no one else is around?
I mean, as an MSP, yes, they should be.
Yeah.
The question then comes down to, are they able to, as
Right.
just an MSP by themselves? I mean, do they have the resources to be able to do that? I mean, I don't know about all of you, but when I had my MSP, I still wanted to have a life. I still had a family, still wanted to
Right.
go on vacations and spend the weekends hanging out. And I think the bad guys aren't doing this stuff on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. They're waiting for after hours and weekends and things like that. And so the MSPs should be watching their customers' networks when no one's around, because that's prime time for the threat actors to get in and do the harm that they do.
Yeah, and you need to have a good after hours response plan, and that needs to go well beyond just somebody's on call, they're going to answer the phone, and that's really where we talk about monitoring. Who's monitoring that network 24/7? And it's not necessarily you need to have somebody from your infrastructure, your company monitoring a dashboard at 3:00 in the morning, but rather finding a partner that can assist with that. Building out a SOC yourself is costly. Let's find a company, a service that can help augment your security staff. Let you take that time off, on the weekends and holidays to spend that with family.
Yeah, and it's funny, you talk about going away, having a life, maybe taking a vacation, and let's face it, we all need that break. And, when we're looking at our packing list, and when laptop is number one on the list over toothbrush, deodorant, and so on, we know there's a problem, but that is the life we've chosen, in this industry. But still, with that being said, we need to be able to make sure that we know we have somebody that's got our back and can ensure, to ensure that our clients are taken care of. And so, how should an MSP go about choosing an MDR vendor?
There's a lot of different MDR vendors out there. I think there's a lot of comparisons that go on, and I think you really want to make sure that you are truly comparing apples to apples. I think from the perspective of an MSP, the thing that you want to look for is, how much is your MDR vendor going to take off of your plate, not add to it, take off of it. Because in a lot of MSP space, very good at the technology, very good at the help desk, very good at the projects, not always as good at the security side of it. And so if you have an MDR provider that just goes, hey, this is going on, go check it out, figure it out on your own. It could leave you in a position the same as you were previously. So what you want to look for with an MDR provider is somebody who takes off of your plate, makes it easier, is an extension, as Steve, as you said, an extension of your team. You want them to be there to assist you, help secure that environment, do root cause analysis, hands on keyboard. You don't just want to I always kind of liken it this way, where, if your house is on fire, do you want the fire department to show up and hand you a checklist and that checklist tells you all the steps you need to do to put out the fire that's in your house? Like grab a bucket, fill with water, put it on. If there's still, fire, rinse and repeat. Or do you want the fire department to show up, put out the fire in your house, and then come to you and say, hey, this is where it started. I mean, we got the fire out. We checked the other rooms. There's no other smoldering, embers over there. This is how it started. And here's how you can prevent it in your next house from happening again. To me, that's a real big difference, and something that you want to look for in your MDR provider, that they are truly an extension of your team, because it's going to make the difference for you as the MSP, but also for your customers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest part in there is finding a company you can partner with. There's a reason, why, at Sophos, we call all of our people that we work with partners, the MSP partners out there. It's a relationship between us and our MSPs that are out there as well. You're not going at this alone. You want to find somebody who's going to be there. Even from the sales side of it. I know Chris and I are both on the sales side. We have a whole team of threat hunters that sit behind us and back us up as we're making these claims there, which is great. But all of us are actually on call for you as well. And we're there to partner with all of the MSPs out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you guys are both ex-MSPs. You've been there, you've done that. And, you've got a lot of experience from that. And, a question for both of you is, what is one thing that you underestimated, while you were in the trenches, that you could now advise MSPs to prioritize today?
That's a good one. I guess I can start off on this one because, when I got out of the MSP space, ransomware was really starting to ramp up. It was not quite as kind of rampant as it is right now, where you hear that name and it just shaking your boots. But it started becoming a real threat. And one of the key takeaways that we had, and I wish we would have gotten on sooner, was we focused on obviously the technology, the endpoint, the firewall. How do we stop things from getting in? But spending more time with the end user, spending more time customizing where they can go, whether that's web controls, education, as far as what not to click on. And I know we're all doing that today. We've got phishing campaigns and things we send out there. Sophos fishes us all the time on that side of it. But that level of education, starting that early on in the process, would have been something that would have greatly helped my team be able to get through the rest of their days dealing with ransomware. It'd been a piece where somebody didn't click on something that they thought was coming in from the CEO, which is coming from really outside the organization. So yeah, I'd say you need to have all those things watching. At the end of the day, if we could have started early 10 years ago, end user education on there would have definitely been a big piece of it.
Excellent.
Yeah. I would agree, Steve. My MSP stuff was not that long ago, so a lot of the education piece was there, and it does help, assuming that people learn from the things that you're educating them on. Sometimes they can go through the education, they still click on stuff. So it's a constant battle, and I think preparing the team that I had was to, and this was kind of a mantra that we had, was it was security first. And so it wasn't just enough that we needed to make sure all of our clients had firewalls and endpoint and email security and, phish threat training and, all the other elements that go into security. But it came down to everything that we did in every single one of our processes. Because before we really implemented the security first viewpoint, the security first mantra on there was like, we'd have some engineers doing things one way and, other engineers doing, things a different way. And so we really had to kind of back up a little bit and go, everything that we do, even if it's not related to a firewall or, endpoint security or email, we need to always look at it from a security first mindset. What kind of risk does this process have? And how do we minimize that risk? How do we incorporate the elements of this into the security first? So we really wanted to focus on, yes, we do help desk. Yes, we do projects. Yes, we do on-sites. We do all that sort of stuff. But we really needed to be that security first. How do we protect the customers that we had and the lifestyle, the business that they built, the customer information that they have? How can we protect that at every step of the way, not only in the systems and services, but in the processes to support them in the processes and everything else. So I think that was, something that, had we started with first, I think would have been a little bit easier because we had to kind of like step back, refigure out things and then kind of, leap forward at that point. But, just always looking at everything going, why is this important? Why do we need this? And how do we minimize the risk in implementing whatever it is?
Yeah. And that security first component, I keep thinking about a couple analogies, people in a technical role, they never want to throw in the towel because they feel defeated. They feel like they have to be the one to fix the problem. Also, I think we have this mindset that we have to do it all ourselves. We have to do it internally. And, at the end of the day, when we partner with somebody like Sophos, it allows you to expand your operation to provide a higher level of service. And, and you're able to bring on, a whole extension of your team without adding them to your payroll. With all that being said, in talking specifically about Sophos MDR solution, you guys have a lot of integrations, and I think is somewhere in the area of 350 or more vendor integrations. Can you just elaborate just briefly on that?
Yeah, so one of the cornerstones of the MDR service that we built was that we don't want to just take in data from our endpoint, from our firewall, our email. We have all that data already. We want to bring in all of the third-party data that we can. That way we can meet our MSPs and their customers where they're at in their security journey. And we've continued to evolve that as we've gone on. We started this with, I believe, only about 20 some odd integrations with different vendors out there hitting all of the big names. We've expanded that out into the 50 to 60 realm. And with some recent acquisitions, we just bought a company called SecureWorks. We're taking that to the next level. We're bringing in to the ability, and once we get this fully implemented and into the system, you're going to see 350 plus, as we said in there, integration. So there really won't be a vendor that you're working with today that we can't bring that data in. And when you are talking about that MDR service, being able to have that visibility, being able to see what's going on inside of the environment, making sure that you can see everything. We can take this to kind of that building for the MSP or the customer. You're putting locks on the front doors. You've got cameras, but all the stuff on the inside of it, monitoring, motion detectors. If no one's monitoring all that data, they're just looking at the lock of the front door and somebody broke in through the roof, we're not going to see that data. So absolutely, we want to see that data. So the more we can do, the more we can bring in. Again, I'd say the biggest piece on here is it helps us meet our customers and our MSPs partners where they're at in their journey.
Yeah, as an MSP, you go into environments and there's always all different kinds of things there, and any MSP knows how hard it can be, especially going into a new customer, somebody that's coming on board. And going, oh, well, we're going to have to replace this and this and this and this. And then you start to get that pushback. So, when we talk about choosing the right partner, Sophos is here going, you don't need to have all of our stuff in here. We can bring in all of that data from the stuff that's already there. Makes it a lot easier to close that customer, bring them in and say, listen, we don't have to change what you already have. It's working, it's there, but we can still focus on the security part of it because we can bring that data in to the systems and services that we already have.
Okay. So as we're wrapping up, for any of our listeners that are wanting to kick the tires, and learn more, you guys have a special partner offer. Could you guys elaborate a little bit more about that and how they can take advantage of it?
Yeah. Anybody who is watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, if you become a Sophos partner, one of the things that we do is we provide NFRs. You can utilize the NFRs in your own business, run the software, run the services, see how it works, see how it integrates with what you're doing. Kick the tires, if you will. So for any new partners that wind up joining, we will provide you a jump in band pricing. So the way that we work is typically, brand new partners come in on a band 1. The more product you deploy, the wider you go on your customer base, that lowers your price. You wind up coming up in bands. And so what we'll do is provide any new partners. When you come on, we will actually jump you up a band or 2, even though you don't have, those licenses deployed yet. It gives you better pricing in our system. So all you have to do is just email me, chris.wanamaker@sophos.com. Just let me know that you saw us on the Everything MSP podcast, and I will make sure that once your account is set up, that we get that special band pricing put in place for you.
Awesome. Chris, Steve, I want to thank you both. Some incredible insights. I want to thank you for bringing that former MSP lens, keeping it very practical. For everybody listening, thank you. If today's episode helped you, share it with your team, share it with other MSP owners, leaders, help them sleep a little better too. With that being said, I'm Dan Tomaszewski here with The Stack, with Everything MSP. Learn, share, grow. Until next time, we will see you soon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.